This is Studio 809.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone. You can find me on my website at hikingbob.com, where there's links to my columns at the Pikes Peak Bulletin, the other podcasts we've done, my photographers, everything's there. I'm not going to bore you with all the details. Social media, all that stuff is at hikingbob.com. Today we're going to talk about animal encounters. If you live in Colorado, you're aware that Colorado Parks and Wildlife has issued their annual warning about bears coming out of hibernation and wanting to eat and get into trash cans and stuff like that. And today we're going to talk about not only bears, but other encounters. And my guest is Randi Minetor, who has written a book, and we've had her on before, but she's written a book about, it's called The Bear at the Bird Feeder. And when you look at the title and you look at the picture, you think this is just about bears, but it's actually about all kinds of wild animal encounters that you might have around your home. And Randi, thank you for being on the podcast.
Oh, thanks so much, Bob. It's great to be with you again.
It's always a lot of fun having you on here. Last time we had you on here, you were talking about a slightly different topic about deaths that occurred in national parks, and you had just done a book about Rocky Mountain National Park, and we learned a lot about that. As I was telling you before we started recording, I did a trip to New York State last fall, and you had a book about hiking to waterfalls in New York. I grabbed a copy of your book that helped me find my way to waterfalls that I took a bazillion pictures of, and people who followed my social media were probably hoping that at one point I would fall in one and stop taking pictures and posting them online. But your book helped me find all these great and wonderful state parks out there, by the way. I have to say that the New York state parks are just gorgeous state parks, and there's so many of them.
Yes, it's a big surprise to people that New York State is not New York City. That we have this extraordinary, we have mountain ranges and beautiful areas, and the Finger Lakes, all these places that are heavily wooded and, beautiful green, wonderful views, terrific hiking. I've written 11 hiking books about New York State. So yeah, lots to do here if you're ever heading out east.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a great time out there. I wish I could spend more time. I have to go back and finish. But the one thing I noticed out there, and we'll just drift off topic a little bit, was how many state parks are actually in the Finger Lakes. I think there's 5, 6, 7 state parks just within. I don't think it took me more than an hour to drive from the closest one to where I was to the furthest one. And there were some in between that I passed or stopped to eventually as I went through there. So there are a lot of state parks in just that little region. So I imagine there's a bunch of them in the whole state.
Oh, yeah. The Adirondacks and the Thousand Islands are just loaded with state parks. And thank goodness, because originally all of the land along the Finger Lakes and other beautiful places was sold off for private use. So it's all, very heavily developed. So thank goodness New York State stepped in and made some parks so that we can get some access to the Finger Lakes without having to own a second home.
Yeah. That's true. It's true.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful time out there. Your book helped me a lot. Helped me a lot to find these things. And I may not have hiked to a lot of the trails, but it told me where the waterfalls were, so I can go get some great pictures. And your book talks about photography about the waterfalls when you get out there too, which I really appreciated. But today we're going to talk about your. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that's my husband's photography throughout the book. We actually hiked all those waterfalls. So I just want to, make sure to mention him, Nick Minetor, for his wonderful photography.
And it was great stuff, and it helped. And I look at that, and I'm going, he was 10 feet over this way. Let me go over there and take that picture. So it really worked out well. Your book, it's called The Bear at the Bird Feeder. And like I said, when you look at it, you think, well, this is just about bears. How can you write a whole book about bears and feeding bears? But as you read the book, it's obviously about more than just bears. There's a section in here about just about everything. I mean, it is about bears, but it's about deer, and it's about mountain lions, and it's wild turkeys. We can tell you all about wild turkeys out here. They run, they're rampant out here. Deer and all these different
bobcats, fox, coyote, alligators if you happen to live out there. Yeah, right. Skunks. Yep, all of those animals, foxes.
Yep. You didn't write anything about wolves, but no, the reason why I write is because we're doing a wolf reintroduction into Colorado. It's been going on for a couple of years now. But I imagine that number is probably still small enough not to be an issue.
Well, they don't show up in people's backyards that much. I mean, they certainly show up if there's a great deal of land and livestock and things that are attractive to wolves, but generally not in somebody's backyard. And this book, the subtitle of this book is Why We're Seeing More Wild Animals in Our Neighborhoods and How We Can Live in Harmony with Them. So this was really about residential areas.
Which I'm hoping we don't see wolves in residential areas, so we really have that'd really be a problem. So tell us about this book. What was your goal behind this? What was your was it just did you just want to tell people about this is what's happening? Or I mean, I imagine people know this, probably have seen, if they live out here, especially in Colorado, they've seen bear, they've seen skunks and raccoons and all these other animals in their yards. So what was the idea behind writing this?
Well, the thing about animals, about the animals that we're seeing in our neighborhoods, is that they never really left, even though there's been this rampant development and what we call urban sprawl and all of these things going on with the land. The animals didn't just head for the hills. For the most part, they still need the same kind of habitat they've always had. So they've stuck close to the neighborhoods. And over time, they've found benefits to being close to human beings. So they have started to show up now it's been a while, but they're showing up in people's backyards or front yards or on their land. And people don't really know generally what to do about that. The first thing they do is pick up the phone and call animal control, get rid of this thing in my yard. And, if it's not hurting anything or anybody, animal control is going to say, find a way to cohabit with this animal. They don't relocate unless the animal is dangerous. So you've got to find a way to make peace with this. And that's what I was hoping to get across with this book. Not just to accept that, well, there may be a bobcat in my backyard, but to find a way to live in harmony with this animal so that it's not threatening to you and you're not threatening to it.
Gotcha. And what I liked about the book as I read through it was you talk about the different animals. Like we've said, you talk about bear and deer and raccoons and fox and skunks and bobcats. And even though, and at the end of each chapter, you talk about how to avoid conflicts with these in your backyard, most of which involve the same things we think. Keep the food out of there, and everything animals do is about food. So keep the food out of there, you're going to be fine. But you go into specifics about what the issue is with having these different animals in your yard, in your backyard. And also about the specifics. You even talk about bats, which I didn't even think about bats. You have a whole chapter on bats, about how to keep, and your experience with a bat while you were in bed one night, which I was laughing the whole way. I was laughing the whole way through it. It's a good story. But you also go into specifics. So it's not, you think, well, just keep the food away. But you go into specifics about what these different animals are after. And specific advice for it. So if somebody sees a bobcat, I've had a bobcat wander through right up my driveway. A couple years ago, caught it on my Ring camera. Like, whoa, hey, what the heck is that? But in the middle of the night, it knew nobody was around. It was going to be just fine.
Right.
And they try to avoid things. But I like how you were specific on each animal that you discussed in here.
That's the thing, that it's, while there are some things that, like, how can I say this in 14 different ways? Lock up your trash, but there are some animals that, we can't assume that all animals eat the same things or have the same needs or looking for the same things. So the question is, if you have, let's say, raccoons that are plundering your trash night after night, then there are specific things you need to do, things that maybe you don't put into your trash or ways that you have to lock up your trash. so that they don't have that opportunity, and they will go elsewhere if that's really troublesome for you. Things like that, bats in particular, since you brought them up, they're the one animal I'm phobic about. Isn't that crazy? And it's not outdoors. I don't care what they're doing. In my house, I become a puddle on the floor. So it's the weirdest thing. But what do we do about that? We called an exterminator who turned out not to be that at all. They turned out to be pest control. And what bats need is a place to spawn and raise their young, and then to get out of your area. So they come into your, into your space or at night. That's flipped. Into your space in the morning. They have their young in your house, and then when the young are grown, everybody leaves. So what the exterminator does is they put in little gates where the holes are that the bats are getting in, and they're one-way gates. So when the bat leaves, that's the end. It's gone. And thank goodness, because it's been about 6 years, we haven't had a single bat in the house again. So the solutions are not the same for every animal, and I think most people don't have any idea what they're supposed to do and what they're not when these animals visit.
You talk a lot about bears because obviously it's the title of the book, and as a writer out here in Colorado, and you talk quite a bit about Colorado in the bear section of your book, although you talk also about North Carolina and New York and other places. There are bears all over the place.
Yes.
One of the things I get a lot of questions about is, what do I need to protect myself against bears? And my answer is usually, I don't, down here in Colorado, speaking about the black bears, I usually don't worry about bear encounters. I'm hiking all over the place. I don't worry about bear encounters. I've never had one while I've been on a trail. I do 800 miles a year. I don't see bears. I think I make enough noise tromping through the woods with my backpack, and I have my stinky dog that I'm sure the bears can smell from a mile away, and they run off. And you talk about bears and how one of the things I found interesting in your talk about bears was one of the things we're always told is don't get between a bear and a mama bear and its cubs. But then in your book, you talk to an expert who says we've never had a mama bear go after a cub or go after anybody because of their cubs being nearby. That's never even happened that they were even aware of. So I like that you're also dismissing some myths. Not that I would, and I'm going to preface this by saying, don't go up there and try to hug the bears or anything. Don't do anything dumb.
No.
But you're probably going to be fairly safe around the black bears, especially those here in Colorado and most of the states in the country.
Well, this is the thing. The bears generally don't want anything to do with us. They just want what we leave around for them. So, a bear will go into your trash. A bear will break into your garage to get to your trash if they can smell it, and they can really smell like no other animal. I had one person describe to me the bear. He came down for breakfast in the morning, and the bear was in his kitchen. Because he had left the door open. It was a warm night. He left the door open and just the screen door. And a bear can go through a screen door like it's paper. So he smelled food. He went in. He opened the refrigerator. You hear stories like that, and what it's really all about is the bear just wants the food. Right. If you have blueberry bushes in your neighborhood, chances are, and you're in bear country, chances are bears are going to come and visit and eat your blueberries. That doesn't mean they're going to attack your dog. The one man described to me seeing little old ladies walking their poodles right past these bears. Bear didn't care. That's the thing. All they really want is food. And if you know that, and you know that bears do not consider human beings food, unless they're absolutely desperate, that's just not a direction they're going to go, particularly black bears. Right. Then if you know that, then you can find ways to control their access. One of the things, of course, and that's why it's the bear at the bird feeder, because bird feeders attract every animal, except mountain lions who don't care. But Bears are going to come to your bird feeder if they're in the neighborhood. So the thing is to get those bird feeders out of their reach, and for a lot of places that means bringing them in at the end of the day. In daylight they're out there for the birds. Bring them in, and then the bears will not have those to get to. It's a nuisance, but if you've chosen to live where bears are prevalent, you have to take some precautions. It's just the way it is.
I have a couple of bird feeders in my backyard, and I do have them on a pole. I have them on a post and then a pole with some arms on it, and I actually have to winch. And it's one of the things you suggest, and there's winch them up and down to feed them. I mostly did that to keep the squirrels and the raccoons away from them, but I guess and I live in the middle of a big city. I live in the middle of Colorado Springs, 500,000 people. I don't know in the 35 years I've lived there that we've had a bear anywhere in my neighborhood. But we are seeing reports now of bears deeper into town, and they follow like waterways and stuff to get deeper into town. So it's inevitable. I'm surrounded by a solid fence. I guess a bear could climb over that. So I'm going to kind of keep an eye on that, and maybe, as you suggest, is not to feed the birds in the summer when they can get their own food, and they probably don't need me to feed them, and I could probably save myself a few $100s this summer by not feeding all the birds that are out there. We do tell people out here, if you're going to Wyoming and you get in the brown bear country and grizzly bears, that they're a little more aggressive, but they're still mostly going to try to avoid you. And then, of course, if you're going into Canada where the polar bears are, all bets are off.
Right.
They're a whole nother thing, and they are aggressive. So maybe keep away from those guys.
Oh yeah, polar bears are meat eaters, and they will see us as food. But most of us don't have, I'm not an Inuit. I don't have them in my backyard. Okay. But grizzly bears are a different thing. As I'm guessing your listeners in Colorado know well that, with a black bear, you want to try to make yourself look big and loud and scary, and that's probably going to scare the black bear off. With a grizzly bear, make yourself look big, that's a challenge to them. So, the whole thing is is to avoid an encounter with a grizzly as much as you can. Make noise on the trail. Don't leave your food out overnight if you're camping. You really do want to have those bear containers so that which eliminate the smell of food so they don't come around. That's the important thing there. Not so much just that they'll steal the food, but then they can't smell it. And of course, bear trash cans that they can't open. So there are different kinds of precautions that are important to take if you live in that part of the country.
Yeah, here in Colorado Springs, there's an ordinance now that if your house is west of I-25, you now have to have, if your trash cans are out all the time, they have to be bear-proof containers, or you cannot have them out until the morning of your trash pickup. So and the town of Manitou Springs, which butts up against the west side of Colorado Springs, has had that ordinance for a couple of years now. And there was a famous video a few years back of a bear that was shot from behind a restaurant, of a bear actually taking a dumpster and wheeling it down the street. It's amazing.
Getting smarter.
Oh, and there's a lot of videos out there of actually the bears at like trailheads. They know how to manipulate door handles. They'll do a door handle check and figure out. And then if there's really something in there, there's a lot of videos of them actually prying up the top of a door and tearing a door apart to get in there for some food. So it's a thing. With bears. Well, but so they're an issue, and obviously we've had some issues with bears here in Colorado, and I don't want to dwell just on bears. We'll get to other animals here in a bit, but we've had issues with bears that became aggressive or would not leave a neighborhood. CPW will take a bear, they'll relocate it. Bears are smart. They move. They've actually come back into neighborhoods. In some cases, they've had to be put down. And when they've done a necropsy on them, they found their bellies full of birdseed.
Yeah.
And not only does that mean that's what attracted them, but birdseed is actually bad for bears, it fills their belly, but it doesn't do anything for them. So you have this big fat bear who's got a full belly, but it's not getting any nutrition, and so they're starving at the same time they're eating. Which, how does that happen? But that's not nutrition for them, and all they know is their belly's full, but they're actually starving to death, and then they become aggressive because they're starving to death, and all these things kind of go in circles here. Well, let's talk about the other thing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that bears, particularly in the fall before they go into hibernation, they've got to take on a whole lot of fat to get them through the winter. So they're much more likely at that point to go for things that fill them up. And unfortunately, bird food is one of the things that makes them feel full, but is not good for them. So that's something to take into consideration. Just as the birds are going through migrating and need that seed, it's the worst time for the bears to get to it. But that's also when they're going to try to break into your garage to get to your grill and, lick off whatever you may have left on the grate in the grill, and other things that are very highly caloric that they don't get in the wild. They can eat a bush full of blueberries and not gain very much weight, but they can grab, just a few cast-offs from your kitchen and get way, way more calories. And somehow they know that without knowing anything about caloric, content or any of that. They know what they have to do.
It seems to go through two phases with bears. It's eating and then eating. They come out of hibernation. That's all they do. They come out of hibernation. They haven't eaten all winter. They're starved. They eat. They go through a month in the summer where they're probably just breeding. And then in fall, they're going into hibernation. So what are they doing? They're eating to go into hibernation. Seems like bears, the two seasons are eating and eating, and maybe a little bit in between where they're still eating. I guess they have to survive, but it seems like they're just constantly on this eating cycle. One of the things I've talked about before was I think the bears like me don't get in my way when I want to eat, and you'll probably be just fine. And I think that applies to people just as much as applies to these animals. Let's talk about another animal on here that you talk about that we hear a lot about here, and I get a lot of questions about mountain lions. Oh, yeah. Mountain lion attacks, just as bear attacks are very rare. Right. The mountain bear attacks, people see bears a lot, rarely ever get attacked by a bear. We know mountain lions are out here. You talk about where you were visiting somebody here in Colorado that said there's probably a mountain lion within a few hundred feet of us, and you're all looking around over your shoulders to see where they're at. If you've hiked on a trail here in Colorado, you have been at least observed by a mountain lion, and had no idea that's happened. I've actually hiked on trails here in the snow, and on my way back, there were mountain lion tracks on top of mine. I never knew that mountain lion was there. A little spooky, a little scary. I also wasn't threatened by them. Tell us a little bit about mountain lions, and not only are they a threat, not a threat? I personally don't worry too much about them. But also how to avoid, again, an encounter with a mountain lion.
Well, then that's the thing that if
or have them in your backyard, I guess. How to avoid having them in your backyard.
It's very, very rare for a mountain lion to show up in your backyard. And if it does, it's going to be probably at night. The one and only mountain lion fatality I'm aware of in Rocky Mountain National Park, as you said, I write these books about people dying in parks, was a child who ran ahead of his parents on a trail, and he just happened to cross the path of a mountain lion already on the move, which grabbed him. I mean, he was there, he was in the way, he might be food, quickly dropped him, and, got harassed off by the parents. But the child actually was so upset that he choked on his own vomit. So that was, that's the thing, that the mountain lion didn't kill him. And they really want nothing at all to do with humans. That's not their thing. They're probably not even going to be looking at your trash. So if you're concerned, if your main concern is mountain lions, stop being concerned. That's not what's going to come for you. They're very secretive. They also, however, will travel long distances for reasons of their own, essentially. And one showed up in New England a few years ago. And it was like mythology, everybody's like faking photos of this mountain lion and, isn't this fun and all that. And then the thing got hit by a car. And suddenly they had proof that yes, there was a mountain lion there. And it turned out they had DNA on file. It was from South Dakota and had wandered its way across the country to Connecticut. So, they are loners, they are long distance rovers. If you have sheep, they may come after a lamb. But generally they're looking for they have a meat diet. They're looking for that. And they expect to do it as fresh kill.
So if there's a mountain lion in your neighborhood, other than maybe it's traveling through, what's it looking for then? Is it looking for a squirrel? Is it looking for a raccoon? Is it looking for your dog or your cat? I have a big dog. The dog I go hiking with, Cole, he's a big 50-pound dog. I'm not as worried about him as I was if I'm going hiking with our little Yorkie who weighs all of 8 pounds and kind of looks like a tender morsel for. Are they mostly so they're looking for other mammals? They're looking for raccoons and squirrels and the such, and maybe your dog and cat.
Right, rabbits, fishers, things like that they're going to find in the wild. They're mostly going to be hunting in forests. So if they do wander into your yard, and if it, as you were describing earlier, that Colorado is having a very unusual weather pattern right now. Right. If they can't find food, then they might go after a dog in your backyard or a cat. But generally, that's not what they're looking for. They don't want to expose themselves to human contact. So the chances are they're not even getting close enough to your home to be a danger to your dog or cat. They're mostly looking for squirrels, rabbits, little larger fawns, with livestock, animal that they can cut away from the herd. That weak one in the back. That's a real thing. That's something a mountain lion will do.
We had an incident here, I want to say 2 years ago in Garden of the Gods, which, hugely popular city park here, that there was, people saw this mountain lion in a tree right near a trail, and caused a big furor. Park rangers go out there, determined that under this tree was a fresh deer that it had killed. Oh, okay. And what this mountain lion was doing was it had its food, it had its fill for the time, and it was just in this tree protecting its kill. And it stayed up there for, I want to say, a day or two. And then sometime during the night, they think it came down and dragged its kill further away out of the... But it didn't bother anybody who came by. It's like, I got my food. It's right here. I just want you, if you leave my food alone, I'm going to leave you alone, kind of a thing. And as I hike around here, I find evidence of fresh mountain lion kills quite a bit. You'll find remnants of a deer here or there or something like that. And we'll find them in our city and county parks right here in town, that they're, the ones that border up against the state, the national forest and stuff. But we find those things out here. But have I ever seen a mountain lion on a trail? Actually seen one? I think I saw one from quite a distance down below me that it probably didn't even know I was up above it looking at it on this trail or anything like that. Again, as many miles as I hike, as much as I do backcountry, I have just not had these encounters. The biggest encounter I have is with deer. And right. They're all over the damn place. Yes. You talk a lot about deer. One of the places I hike a lot for locals is Cheyenne Mountain State Park. As people know, I volunteer there. I'm a trail ambassador. I'm on the trail. There's one trail that at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I am probably going to walk into a herd of deer on this one trail that they always go to bit. There's something that grows up there that they like to eat. And for the most part, they'll look at me and look at their food and look at me. And as long as I don't have my dog with me, and sometimes he's with me, that's a whole other story about how he reacts to deer. They'll kind of ignore me. So But deer can still be a problem in your yard, right? Tell us about deer in your yard. I don't want to cover everything in your book because I want people to buy your book, but we're going to hit on some of the more popular things here.
Sure. Deer are I hate to call them a problem because I love them. But for a lot of homeowners who have done a lot of gardening and landscaping and they want to preserve that, the deer are coming into their yards and eating their flowers and stripping buds off of bushes. And it's just, it's the way that is. Pretty much everybody lives where deer are now, except maybe, downtown New York City. Deer have really have found a lot of benefits to living where people are. And we have systematically killed off their predators. Here in the Northeast, we don't have any wolves. We don't have any mountain lions. Nothing is killing the deer. Maybe some coyotes. That's pretty much it. But so the deer have propagated like crazy. And, we all have deer in our backyards. And they're eating our flowers and plants. And, some of us love them and some of us want animal control to take them away. Well, and animal control is not going to do that. So there are operations in some cities, in particular, I think it was Tega Key that I described in the book in South Carolina, where it's an island and they have more deer on the island than the island can support. So deer are dying and they're wandering out. The biggest threat, honestly, is them wandering out or crossing roads while people are driving, usually at night. This is a big problem. So they have an operation going on where they're sterilizing the deer, the does, so that they can't have more deer. And this is starting to cut down the population. And over time, it will probably eliminate it or pretty close to eliminate it. But they have to keep doing this every year. They have to find the new fawns and sterilize them. So it's expensive, but it's one solution. It's not a solution a homeowner can take. So my best advice to homeowners is plant things that deer don't like to eat. And there are some suggestions in the book. I don't know them off the top of my head. I know they hate petunias, if that helps. But try to do your landscaping maybe half and half with things they will eat and things they won't, so that at least there will be something left if there's not enough natural food out there in the woods for deer to find during a tough winter.
I could tell you a story about my wife who loves to plant flowers in her front yard. And one year she planted daylilies and these big, beautiful flowers. And one day she comes out and they're all chopped off.
Yeah.
But what we did find out was deer don't like cayenne pepper.
Right.
So she got some ground cayenne pepper and just sprinkled it on whatever daylilies came back up after that season. And that kept the deer away. She'd spray them with water so the cayenne pepper would stick to it. Sprinkled them with cayenne pepper. They didn't bother her daylilies anymore, but she was definitely unhappy that her daylilies one morning were gone, and it was because deer had come through. They're tasty. They not only they look good, I guess they taste good, and had taken out her daylilies. And deer here, especially on the west side of Colorado Springs, and in any town around here, are just all over the neighborhood. You drive down streets, and some of these are bucks with huge, beautiful racks. I've had them on my front porch, and my front porch is tiny. I don't know how they didn't take down all the wind chimes with them. Somehow they avoided all the wind chimes, but they come through. They're ubiquitous. They're out here. We had a thing a couple of years ago where Colorado Parks and Wildlife was. They weren't doing a deer count. That's a complicated thing, but they were monitoring deer population because they were getting complaints that people were saying there's more deer in town, and the deer population's gone up. And they went out and looked, and actually what had happened was we'd had another winter where there wasn't much food up high. There wasn't more deer. The deer population was the same, were pretty consistent. It's just that they were having to drift into town because there was no food up where they normally would feed. And they obviously don't want to come into town and feed. So it wasn't that it was a perception of more deer. because you were seeing more of them. But in reality, it was just, they were just moving to where the food was. Again, we'll go back to this thing with food. It's all about food with these animals.
Right.
Kind of all about food with me. Ask my wife how I am when I get hungry. It's all about food, and they were just following the food. And since there was no food in their native habitat,
right,
they were coming down to where there was food, which was in my garden and my wife's flower bed and everybody else's flower bed and whatever else they want to eat out there. So, everything seems to circle around that. What I really liked about your book, again, it was the specificity of it. You could, if you could read the whole book, which I did, but you can also go to a chapter. If you have an issue with squirrels,
right?
There's a chapter on those. By the way, they're bullies. They bully my dog like nobody's business.
They are
squirrels.
Yeah, squirrels have more personality than any animal I've ever encountered. I suppose monkeys were probably, high up in that too, but we don't have those in North America. So, yeah, really. But yeah, squirrels are so much fun to watch, and all their ability to problem solve their way into feeders that are supposed to be squirrel proof is really, really remarkable. I love watching them. And here in the Northeast, we now have gray squirrels and red squirrels. That's new. The red squirrels are new. And watching them vie with one another is a hoot. But they'll eat you out of house and home if they can get into your bird feeders. So I have discovered this wonderful substance. It's a liquid called flaming squirrel. And it's a hot pepper liquid that you can pour into your seed and mix it up and put that in your feeders, and the squirrels hate it. And the birds have no reaction to it at all. They don't have whatever it is genetically that feels the heat of that, but the squirrels sure do, and it burns them, or it gives them a burning sensation that they hate. And they won't go near anything. They'll taste it once, they'll have that reaction, and they'll never go toward it again. So that's a very, that's cayenne, essentially. It's capsaicin, actually, is the substance that's in it. But you got to wear good gloves when you mix this stuff up, because you really don't want to get this in your eyes. That's a bad thing. But that is one way. The other, of course, is to feed with things that squirrels don't like. In particular, safflower seed is something they just don't care for. So we have at least one feeder we have 17 feeders in our backyard at peak season, because I write books about birding and about backyard birding. So I'm always testing stuff. So we always have one or two feeders that just have safflower, and they don't interest the squirrels at all. So there are options for fighting the squirrels, but it's a never-ending battle. There's some of the smartest animals we have.
I have found it with mine, with the wooden post and then a pole basically made out of conduit and two arms, and like I mentioned, winches. But what I have on the bottom of that pole is a baffle,
right?
Like a cone-shaped baffle. That actually, the squirrels are hanging around underneath on the ground getting whatever the birds throw out, but they have absolutely not figured out, and it's far enough away from a tree that they can't jump down to it from the nearest tree. I've had to go out there and trim tree branches, because eventually I'll see one start to wander out on this tree branch, looking at it going, I think I can make that.
Yeah, right.
It's like I go out there with the saw and chop it off. And they're bullies to our dogs. I mean, they just chirp at the dog and just throw stuff at them, and they're just absolute bullies. One more I want to cover that we've seen out here is coyotes. We're seeing more of those. They're a little scarier. They will go after. They don't go after people. Again, they're not after people, but they will go after your dogs.
Yeah.
So you really want to keep them out of your yard, because they hunt in packs. Not too long ago, we were up in Sedona, and my dog and I were hiking on this trail, and he started alerting. He smelled something slightly above us, and I look up, and there was a coyote 20 feet away from us that I didn't even know was there. I think he smelled my dog, and then when he realized I was with the dog and the dog was on a leash, Cole was on a leash, kind of backed off, and then I noticed that 20 feet to the other side down the trail was another one. Didn't even know they were there, and I'm convinced if my dog was loose and running out there on his own, these coyotes would have been after my dog. So I consider them actually, as far as your pet goes, they'll probably be the most dangerous one because they're in an urban setting.
Right.
Out there. They're in town, and you go out in any of our city parks at night, at dusk, you'll start hearing them howling and whatever it is that they do at night for some reason. Tell us about how to keep them out of your yard.
Well, this is a tough thing because coyotes have, pardon my Eastern pronunciation, but they have habituated to some human food. There's a really remarkable ongoing study in the Bronx of New York City, where the coyotes have moved into the city, and there's a team of, oddly enough, high school students that pick through their scat. And they're working obviously with a scientific organization, but they pick through the scat to see what the coyotes are eating. And it turns out what they really like is halal chicken. So they're going to these food carts, on the street and getting chicken from them, perhaps stealing it, perhaps lapping up whatever, fragments are left at the end of the night. But that's a lot of what they're eating. And then from there, it's rabbits and chipmunks and squirrels, but not dogs. They're not actually eating the dogs, and there's plenty of dogs to choose from in the Bronx. So they're still sticking to a fairly normal diet with the addition of cooked chicken. Now out where you are in Colorado and in other wide open places like that, where there are going to be more of these animals, they may be more likely to go after a small dog in a backyard. There are videos online of coyotes trying to grab children. There are very, very few cases in which a coyote has actually grabbed and hurt or killed a child. Very few. That's just too complicated a prey for them.
I think it might also be that they see this thing running, and then after they get close, realize, oh, wait a minute, that's not a dog, or it's not a squirrel.
Right.
Or chipmunk. Hold on a second, I'm going to go chase something else.
Well, yeah, and, it's very rare they're going to run into a 2-year-old outside by itself. So the parent is going to be close by, the parent's going to come after them, the coyote's going to run. They have no interest in that entanglement. So yeah, it's the main thing is to keep your dog on a leash, so it's not running out there looking like it's going to challenge the coyote. But even in your backyard, you're going to want to keep it leashed, or you're going to want a fence. If you live in coyote country, take this precaution. I know it's expensive, but you're probably going to want to fence your yard. And make sure you don't leave out dog food on your porch, because if they get habituated to the food, they will challenge your dog for that food. And that's where you get into the altercation. So don't leave dog food out. As convenient as it is for your dog, don't leave it out overnight.
We have a park. It's literally right across from my house. It's a big city park, Palmer Park, for locals who are listening to this. And there's a section of trails up there that dogs are allowed to run loose on. And I frequently go up there late in the day. And sometimes I warn people with their small dogs, like if they have a dog like my little Yorkie, weighs all of 9 pounds, that when it's late in the day, they may not want that dog running loose up there, because there are coyotes, and there have been a lot of reports of coyotes going after, and sometimes those little dogs disappear because they're tiny and they're easy to catch and they're not on a leash. And like I said, I even worry about my bigger 50-pound dog up there, because they do hunt in packs and they will surround a dog. And maybe in the Bronx it's not as big a deal, because, hey, kudos to the coyotes having good taste. Halal chicken, they're very good. They're going after some good food, and maybe they just don't need to. But here, where they're in this wild area, the Palmer Park is a big park, and it's treed, and there's a lot of wildlife up there. There's deer, everything else up there. Coyotes go after whatever's on four legs and running around that they can catch, and it may be your small dog or your cat or something like that. So for those of you local, if you're in Palmer Park, keep an eye on your dog, especially on the dog runs up there. Randi, again, a wonderful conversation with you.
Thanks so much.
I love chatting with you. You do this great stuff, and what I love is that you can write about all kinds of things. You write about hiking, you write about birding, you write about wildlife encounters like you do here and how to keep them out of here. The book is, I'm imagining it's available pretty much everywhere.
Yes.
It's published by Globe-Pequot, which is also people who do Falcon Guides, which did your book about the waterfall hikes I did. It is available now. It's been available since at least last year sometime.
Yeah, November.
If you are looking for a book if you are concerned about how to keep wild animals out of your home environment, this is definitely the book to get. Well researched as always. A lot of good practical information here and a lot of explanation about why you're going to have wildlife encounters. So if you're listening to this, I'll put a link in the show notes and also when I post this on social media. But this is a really, really good book to have. It's an easy read. Again, Randi, great job on this book. Really enjoyed it. Is there anything that maybe you want to tell us before we go that I haven't asked you about?
Boy, you've been really thorough, Bob. I think you've covered it nicely. No, I think we're good.
Well, The Bird and the Bird Feeder by Randi Minetor, and check out our other books too. By the way, if you're going hiking anywhere, make sure you've got a book on that. And sure. The Bear at the Bird Feeder. I had birds on the mind. The Bear at the Bird Feeder by Randi Minetor. It's a great book, and it's not just about bears. It's about raccoons, and it's about skunks, and it's about deer, and it's about bobcats and mountain lions, and even alligators. For those of you in the southeast, maybe you're in Florida and you have alligator issues. I don't even want to talk about those. I've had an encounter with an alligator. Not an encounter. I'll tell you the story real quick. I was down in the Everglades some years ago. I was going down there to watch a launch at Kennedy Space Center. I had some time, so I was in the Everglades, and I'm seeing alligators, and I love taking pictures. And I see an alligator, and I see the typical thing. I see two eyes, and then the snout.
Right.
Just sticking out of the water. I'm thinking, I'm going to get pictures. So I go to the edge of the water. I'm taking pictures of this thing. The alligator goes under, and I'm looking for it. And I realize my toes are about in the water, and I do not know where this alligator is anymore.
Wow.
I was running back to the car to get back in the car, thinking, I'm standing at the foot of this thing, and this alligator went under, and I don't know where it is anymore, and I'm still standing here with my feet almost in the water. So I got out of there pretty quickly.
That's wise.
But you have a chapter on and you have a chapter on moose, which we didn't even get into moose and elk, which we have out here. And you talked about the issue with driving into people were hitting deer.
Yes.
You do not want to hit a moose or an elk.
Oh no, that you could die from that. Yeah. Never mind your car. That's happened. You could die.
Yeah. Yeah, your car gets totaled with a deer. I don't even want to know what happens to it when you hit a moose or an elk or anything. Anyway, The Bear at the Bird Feeder, Randi Minetor. Randi, thank you so much again for being on the podcast. Great. Best of luck with the book. I think it's a great book to have. It's a good reference material, if nothing else.
Thank you so much, Bob. It's always a pleasure.
And everyone, thank you for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. We'll talk to you later.